So yeah, if you want to ask questions, put your hands up, but let's start with people who haven't asked a question yet. And then once those hands are up, we can put other ones up.
Are we 10 minutes early?
Oh, are we?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
That's okay. Let's get started just so we have, so that way we'll have more time. It'll be recorded. Peter.
Hi, Angelo. Question with regards to the awakening process and synchronicities. So I'll give you a couple of synchronicities, and then I think where it gets a little problematic for me in synchronicity. So I had been very sick, depressed, hospitalized for a while. And I guess through listening to Sam Harris, Alan Watts was kind of prompted on my phone as a YouTube feed, which started unraveling a bunch of stuff for me to, more, I guess, more obvious synchronicities where I go, I've always been anxious about playing piano in front of people. And I'm like, this is something I need to sort out. And then 2 days later, my sister-in-law sends a picture of an open mic with a piano at it. Would you be interested? And so, and these things just seem to be handed to me on a plate. Like, this is obviously, what needs to happen for awakening to take hold. But I find myself getting into spaces where I start to get very analytical about, is what I'm just observing another synchronicity that I need to pay attention to? So there's this analysis of synchronicities that is a little bit, feels congested, and it's got some energy to it. It's restrictive, and I wonder if you had any suggestions on how to work with synchronicities and the analytical mind.
Sure. Yeah. So a very simple answer to the question is don't worry about it too much. I mean, they definitely happen. Synchronicities pop up all the time, and very striking ones that are dismissible as just pure chance. That happens all the time, but it doesn't really matter. Like the part of us that wants to hold on to that is probably, and you can investigate this yourself, is probably because it wants to understand how that works for some control mechanism. But when we see that, like, yeah, there are synchronicities, but we can't control, we're not in control, and we can't predict them necessarily to try to, give ourselves a leg up or give ourselves an orientation that makes us feel more comfortable with how things are, where things are. When you realize that that's not going to happen, no matter how much you try, then it's just a matter of, well, when they happen, it's wonderful. It's like a mystical experience. When it happens, great. But if you're trying to get mystical experiences, if you orient your whole practice to it, it'll just become intensely frustrating. Similar to synchronicities or really anything, any ideal that we place upon practice and realization will be disappointed at some point. And that's fine. We're going to have ideals sometimes we don't even know about. That just feel like some kind of subtle fixation until they drop out. And then in retrospect, we realize, oh, I see, I was holding on to that a certain way. This is probably something like that. It's fascinating. It really is a fascinating thing. But as far as the realization itself playing out, it's unnecessary to understand how and why they work, is what I would say. But you'll see more and more of it. It just happens that way. It's really interesting. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it is. It's there is a I'm not going to say there's a need to relax around it, but there is it's so blatant that I'm starting not to be shocked by it anymore, even though it should be astonishing. But yeah.
It happens all the time, and I see it so frequently that it's, I mean, probably daily something comes into play that way. Actually, it is sort of daily. One thing that's really obvious now is because I talk to people from all over the world that are unconnected to one another and don't know each other, and very similar topics will come up among big groups of people, like all over the world at the same time that last a week. So for like a week, I'm talking about the same exact subject to multiple people. And this is really common, really, really common. And that's often how I decide to make the videos or whatever. It's just already there, and it's simple and expressing that way. So I don't know if it's just based on the conditions of the human collective conscious, but it definitely seems to happen that way. And that's just one example that I notice all the time. So
Yeah, I've heard Bob Dylan used to trying to write songs down really quickly before somebody else grabbed the idea. So
I love it. Yeah, exactly.
thanks very
Very
much.
cool.
That's
Yeah,
great.
nice talking to you. Okay. All right. Claire.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm really new to all this, like from the beginning of March, when I found a therapist who introduced me to non-duality.
Hmm.
And when Jeff was talking the other day, it resonated with me. I don't rehearse. Well, what I rehearse is anger. I was abused a lot as a child, and 60 years later, I was vacuuming and I sort of was in a trance or something, because I came out of it and realized I was crashing the vacuum into all the furniture in my house, trying to kill one of my abusers.
Hmm.
And I talked to my therapist, saying, okay, breathe, just let it flow, feel where you feel the anger, which really helped. So I'm not committing homicide by vacuum anymore. When Jeff was talking, I realized that I wear a coat of anger all the time. And I will catch myself having mini vacuum cleaner moments with other situations. And it's not an easy thread to untangle, because it's not like a clear cut, well, this happened and I'm angry about it. It's like, I could be doing something totally non-triggering, folding laundry, and I will suddenly realize for the last 5 minutes, I've been having a very angry conversation with you.
Hmm.
And it could be about something that may have happened, or it could be about the former president, whose name I will not mention, or it could be about anything unrelated to any. So I guess my question is, when I find myself doing this, is the breathing through it and thinking where I feel it, is that real self inquiry? I haven't gotten that far in your book yet.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's a form of it for sure. Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
something else I could do? Because I've been wearing this coat for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're able to recognize these anger patterns coming, if possible, take a few minutes to sit with it instead of, if you're vacuuming, if you're folding laundry. Obviously, you don't always catch it ahead of time, as you're describing, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. When you notice, oh my gosh, there's anger here. If you can, give yourself a few minutes to sit with it. And just let the anger be what it is. If it has a story to tell, let it tell the story. It's, don't try to push down and repress the anger in that moment. Let it move through your system. Let yourself feel it, like as if you could expand the container of it just enough so that the anger has a little more room to move, the energetic experience of it. And the way you expand that container is you just don't distract yourself with other things in the moment. So you say, okay, I'm going to put my laundry aside for 20 minutes. I'll get to it in 20 minutes. I want to give myself this time to feel the anger that I wasn't able to feel as a child, because I was in a situation where I had to be in survival mode all the time. I didn't have time to feel when I was a young adult because I was busy, and I was also in whatever it was. But now I do have the time. I'm going to give myself the time. And you really give yourself the gift of the time and the space to feel it. And it won't always feel good, but it will feel like what needs to be felt. That's why it's breaking through. That when something's breaking through into consciousness that way, it wants your attention, is how I would interpret it. And it doesn't mean you're not willing to give your attention. It's probably more like you've just been in the habit of not giving your attention because we fear anger. Anger can be destructive, of course. We can take it out in ways and on people that maybe it's misdirected. But all of that happens from the repression of it, not necessarily from the fact that it's there in the first place. The fact that it's there in the first place is because your boundaries were violated. That's where anger comes from. So I would really just, in a very simple and practical act, just give yourself some time when it comes, and it'll come. That's the beautiful thing about emotions is you don't really have to go fishing for them. They come sooner or later. When they want to be expressed, when they want to be felt and acknowledged, they will come. So give yourself that space, give yourself 20 minutes and just sit. Put your attention in the body and see, okay, can I relax the body just a bit more? Even if it feels tense, whatever, just a little bit. Can I relax the mind just a little bit more? And now turn your attention and tell the anger, like, you have a right to be here right now. It's okay for you to be here. Whatever you need to feel. And it could even be writing something down. It could be like it needs almost a journaled outlet, like a narrative outlet. But the key to this, I think, is giving it permission to be here, and then kind of giving yourself permission to allow it to be here, and realize you're in a safe space when you create the safe space. And you're obviously at a place in your life where you know what boundaries are logically and practically. And so now that even though when you're in younger parts of your life where you didn't have situations where you could uphold the necessary boundaries because you were abused essentially, but now you can do it for yourself. And then that anger can kind of unfurl a little bit. It can tell its story. It can just move a little bit more, and it tends to soften up a lot when we're not repressing it, pushing it down. And again, I don't think you ever chose to repress and push the anger down largely. I think it was just kind of came with the package. A lot of times when we're abused, we learn two things at once. We learn, we're transmitted some kind of message that says you're not okay. And that's either through physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. And then the other part of the message that's transmitted as, and pretend you are, and repress that. Those get transmitted together, and then we carry it with us, and we believe the overlying package, the message that's holding the package together, saying, don't look here. You don't deserve to, feel healed. This is shame. And that's okay. We can just touch that first layer and say, this is shame. This says, don't look here. But I know now I'm going to give myself permission to look here. I'm going to give myself permission to feel this and feel it. That's what I recommend. A very simple thing. Start there.
Thanks.
Does that sound actionable?
Yes, it does.
There's a really, really good documentary if you feel like watching it. It's amazing. It's called The Work. There's 2017 and 2019 versions. I saw it on Amazon Prime. It's actually about these men in prison who are, many of them lifetime prisoners, but they've developed this circling group, this work group. And these are all people who have abused others, but they've also themselves been horribly abused as children. And so they finally, to break the cycle of abuse, they put together this workshop, this thing, and it works really well. But the process they put each other through is amazing. It's quite something. So if you ever feel inclined to check that out, it's really neat.
Thanks.
It was nice talking to you. Good luck.
Angela.
Yeah.
Angela.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I add something really quickly to that?
Sure.
Since she referenced me in her talk.
Yes.
I will add that I had a lot of repressed anger, and on top of that, I had an identity as a nice guy, and nice guys don't get angry, and so it took me 6 months of pretty intense emotion work in therapy. My therapist would, I'd be envisioning my mother, and I had a lot of anger towards my mother, and my therapist would be like, "What do you want to do to her?" And I'm like, "I want to hit her." And she's like, "Well, do it," because it's only in my mind. And I couldn't bring myself to do it. I'm like, I can't hit my mom. It's my mom, I can't, I wouldn't hit anybody, much less my mother. And she just worked with me and worked with me and worked with me. And I will tell you, I have killed my mother many times in therapy now. I finally allowed myself to let the anger pour out, and to know that however I want to work that anger out internally was okay. Even if it was nothing I would ever dream about doing externally, I allowed myself to completely feel it and to work it out. And that really, really helped me a lot. It's so easy to just go back to your old repressed modes of, push it down, push it down, push it down until it explodes. And I found it much more useful to me to kind of just give myself the permission to just let it roll, however I wanted to express it, even if it was ways that I would never dream about treating another human being in real life. So just thought I'd add that to it as well.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that's wonderful. Yeah, exactly. I think, again, we're at a level of maturity where we're not going to physically act out on it and harm somebody. So there are many ways to let that anger express itself, come into consciousness, inhabit the body in various ways, and even the imagination, and that's fine. It has a story to tell. That's what I feel when I hear these stories of massive amounts of repressed anger. Of course, it has a story to tell. It has a story it's been trying to tell your whole life. It just hasn't known how to do it or hasn't had the outlet. So, okay. Let's go to Maggie.
Hi, thank you. Gosh, there's so many things. I have a few, and they probably could go fast. So let me just pour them out. One of them is, you often refer to my teacher, and I'd be curious to know who that was. And then another one is, how do you balance the intention and the extreme yearning with the moment by moment being with life as it is? Because I feel like I'm kind of like it's the watch pot that never boils, I keep like opening my eyes. Am I one with the objects? No. The answer is always no. I have not realized these things. I'm not having these experiences. So how do you do that? And then also, when you say life, what do you actually mean by that? Because you'll say, you are not, what's keeping you from life? And it's like, I feel like I'm in the middle of it. I don't like it very much, but I'm in it. But anyway, so is that clear enough, or did I go too fast?
Sure. Nope, that's fine. But the teacher I'm usually referring to, if I talk about my Zen, I've had many teachers, I would say, to be honest. The more realization has progressed, the more teachers I have, which they're everywhere all the time, including you. But the Zen teacher I talk about, his name is Danon Henry, and he's still around. He doesn't, I don't think he formally teaches so much. He did formally teach at the Denver Zen Center for many years, and then essentially retired, kind of went into hermitage, but then he was invited to be a sort of teacher at somewhere in New Mexico. I haven't been down there. So, but he's there. He's not the main abbot or teacher, but he's there in residence, I think, and he helps teach. He was a student of Philip Kapleau Roshi, and also a student of Robert Aiken Roshi, the Diamond Sangha. So as far as how you have such a yearning, and that's wonderful. And then what do you do with it, except for turn it into more seeking, right? That's the question. This is that perfect setup for awakening, right? It's the friction point where intense desire to wake up, intense drive to know your true nature, comes into contact with this massive doubt mass, right? This intense doubt mass. And when we feel intense doubt mass, what we usually do, the cure we've learned for that is seeking, mental seeking, right? Daydreaming, distraction, all of it. So it's like, take a step back and get to that discomfort of the friction point of the doubt mass that didn't start when you became a spiritual seeker. It's already there. It's what makes us feel like we're holding back from life, in a sense, which will get me to your third question. Finding the friction point, or the anomaly, or the paradox between this massive amount of doubt we carry already, and this belief, and it's more than a belief, it's an instinct in realization in the truth of whatever, however you call it, or however you came in contact with it, whether it's Kensho or non-duality or just this or everything and nothing, or however it hit you the first time it hit you and how it's hit you since, where you say, yes, there's something there. There's something more real than real here. I know there is. So how do I put those together? How do I sort that out? You can't. You just can't, right? You can't. It's illogical. It's just, you have to go beyond logic. That's why the friction point itself is so powerful. That's why the one-pointed approach is so powerful. That's why Mu is so powerful. You can't start to answer it with your mind. It's impossible. You are in an impossible situation. When you want to wake up, you're in an impossible situation, because what you've been taking yourself to be sees the world a certain way, and that way creates its own prison. That's the instinct that we know. That's the doubt mass, and truth is what is the light that shines through. So that's the key. That's the cauldron of misery, in a sense, that wakes us up, that helps us to wake up. So I can't give you an exact answer, because you have to find your exact answer. And again, it could be anything. Could be, what is Mu, right? That worked for me in a sense, because there's no mental process that's going to make that make sense. Who am I might be useful, but for some people, it's too intellectual almost. Like, well, you start thinking about, well, who am I? Well, I'm this and that. I'm the past, and I'm my memories. Okay, well, I'm not my memories, but I'm conscious, so I must be consciousness, right? And it can kind of lead to almost an intellectual thing. But for others, it makes sense. Or where am I? Or what am I? Right? So you have to find your question. You have to find, if you want to use inquiry. But the question has to be fueled by this friction point, again, between doubt mass and the trust in the Dharma, in awakening, in truth, that there's something really there, that we're not making it up when we talk about Kensho awakening, that it's a very real transformation. And you know that, or you wouldn't be here. So one way of approaching this is to remind yourself every time you start to doubt it, or every time you start to seek, okay, no, it's not in the future. It has to be here. Well, what the heck could it be if it's here? It has to be here. It's already here. So what is it? Yeah. The mind might say, oh, well, it's this and that. I need to merge with the objects. Okay, that's thought. What's here that's not thought, right? Anything the mind says, you can essentially discount when it comes to this and say, no, that's more seeking. What is it that's here? Or what is it that I am taking myself to be now? Or what am I? What is the perception that's the most primary thing right now? What is the sense that's the most primary before it reaches out to identify with anything? What is that? What is my face before my parents were born? So any of these can really catch for you, but I can't tell you which one it will be. The interesting thing you said about looking at things and trying to be one with them, my teacher actually talked about that. The Zen teacher, he actually talked about that once, I remember, and he said it was very frustrating for him because he was trying to merge with things, and because he believed that he was supposed to be one with the flower or something. Yeah. But that also goes back to show you, be careful what you believe. Be careful what you learn about spirituality. This is all about primary discovery. You have to discover something that I've never discovered, or that anyone here has ever discovered, or anyone that's woken up has ever discovered, because that's what it'll feel like. It'll feel so completely new, so completely fresh, so primary that no one has ever talked about it. And you'll know that. That's what we're talking about, right? That's what we're pointing to. It's before any concepts, before any conceptions, before you learned anything, even about spirituality, especially about spirituality. The freshness of it is fascinating, in that often people will say, this is not what I thought it would be at all. It's not really spiritual, right? It's not, of course not, because whatever you thought spiritual was, that's what you were expecting. This is not what you're expecting by definition. Anything you're expecting is a thought. Can you feel that? Can you feel into that?
It kind of makes sense. I mean, I haven't had any of those other experiences that people are, I'm just going straight on faith, have been for
Awesome.
years. But it's all that makes sense now. I mean, what am I going to do? Go back to church? You know, it's like, I'm lost to all the past. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, I feel like,
Sometimes it's just
It's
a
all
matter
I
of,
have. It's all
It
I
is.
have to go on. You
I
know
can
what
feel it. I
It's
mean, I can
like,
feel your dedication to it, and that's great. Sometimes it's just a matter of being really honest with yourself and going, what ideas have I collected about this?
yeah,
And discount them. It's
yeah.
uncomfortable, but just say, hey, oh, I actually believe that I'm going to talk this way when I wake up. That's a thought. It's a belief. It won't be like that. It won't be like that. It's too fresh, too immediate, too alive. And so then it comes to the word aliveness. You asked about life or aliveness. I've actually had discussions with people about this word because it's one of those things like presence where it can mean different things depending on how it's used or who uses it. But for me, all I can say is for me, I didn't realize how much distance I had felt from being alive or from aliveness when I was in my head. Like I knew I was alive, but it felt like almost like looking out from a window and I was managing life out there or something. It wasn't just like aliveness, being alive, celebrating and enjoying itself. So sometimes it's an obvious perception that there's a sense of separation, distance, isolation, hesitation from life. Like you're always holding back a little bit or trying to manage it or pushing and pulling on it. Sometimes that's obvious and sometimes it's not, but it's always obvious when the shifts start happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for your questions.
Thank you.
Okay. We got Patty.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for this opportunity. I've been consumed by exhaustion for 90% of this retreat, which is not unusual for me at retreats. I've tried my conventional ways of dealing with it, that I learned, which are often helpful. In any case, that's where it's still happening. And I'm really excited about your teaching. I haven't been excited about any teacher for a long, long time. And I've been listening to your teachings online and so on, and reading your book. So one of the key things I've taken from your teaching is self-acceptance and the importance of that and following my intuition. And so I've been working with that in this retreat. And just relaxing into the exhaustion and basically giving myself up to creator source. And the main thing I wanted to ask you is I've been consumed by uncomfortable physical energies all my life, basically since I was 12. And they come and go, and sometimes for months at a time. And so I've been having trouble sleeping during the retreat and for some time before, and waking up in the night with just a horrible physical energy. It just feels like I'm going to go crazy if I can't get out of it. But it's not pain, but it's painful to me. And so I'll often get up and I'll do some stretching and exercise, and I'll sit meditation, I'll pray. So that's been going on. And since I've been listening during the retreat when I can't meditate to one of your guided meditations from another retreat where you really focus on the body. And so I've been practicing that. And when you talk about the energies in the body, from what I've seen so far, which is little, but all I hear so far is like, I don't hear about the difficult energies, the energies that make you want to freak out. Mm-hmm. So I just wondered if you could say something about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in the Buddhist model, there's this Buddhist fetter model. There's this series of sort of, well, they're called fetters, but there's a series of layers of identity that one dissolves over through the course of a spiritual unfolding. And the ninth fetter is called restlessness. And I think what you're describing is essentially restlessness. It underlies much of this, probably actually, I would say it underlies all of this emotional pain that comes along with this process, the feeling of yuckiness, the feeling of wanting to crawl out of your skin, of I don't know what to do with myself. And I look and it's like, it's not severe physical pain. It's just severe discomfort. It's something that's just saying no. If you could boil down the mind saying no to everything, to a physical sensation, that's what it is, right? And not that you can go after it directly as energetic restlessness with these other layers of identity intact, but just knowing that that's what's underneath it, that there's a strong force underneath all of these layers of identity operating. And when we feel it very directly, it feels energetic. It feels like Kundalini, or intense energy moving through, or intense restlessness, or again, wanting to crawl out of your skin, or very uncomfortable. So that's what I think it is. And I've felt it many times. I've gone through many phases of that. What I can say is the more identity layers that drop off, strangely and paradoxically, the more directly you feel it, but the easier it is to deal. It's fine. It ends up being fine. And in fact, at some point it becomes almost like ecstatic, or it's so close to being the difference between ecstatic and like excruciating, because what the key point is, anything that's in us that wants to resist that is going to suffer. And it's kind of like showing you that. It's like a flashlight, only you wish there was a 10-watt flashlight pointing in your body going, here, look here, let's take care of this. Instead, it's like 1,000-watt flashlight, like, look at all of these places of energetic blockage and so forth. And that's why it feels so intense. Adyashanti has described this for people as, you're used to the energy of 120 volts running through a circuit that's used to 120 volts, and now it's 1,000 volts. And that's what this feels like, right? So what you're going through is not uncommon. It's more common in some people than others, but everyone experiences some degree of it. And in deeper realization, it can become quite prominent. So that's the background of it. The really good news about this is the answer is pretty simple. And it's something I'm sure you've heard, but I want to try to say it in a different way that gives you some actionable approach to it. And it's all about resistance. But the resistance isn't just a mental resistance that says, no, I don't want it. It's not like you can just tell yourself, okay, I decided I'm okay with this and I want to feel it right now. That usually is not going to reverse the very deeply instinctual no. You could try it, but generally speaking, it's not like that. It actually requires some inquiry. And it's sometimes as simple as this, but it takes a sort of really vulnerable approach and a willingness to feel deeply. The energetics of this are, you could say, coming up from, you use the word source, let's use that. They're coming up from a very, very deep place. I might even call this the will to be. It's like the most fundamental animating force. It becomes a defense mechanism. Without defense mechanisms, life forms don't survive. But when this defense mechanism gets attached to human consciousness, to the apparent separate identity, it can kind of become a monster. It can become a very intense thing, and it gets intertwined with resistance patterns, which makes it very uncomfortable. So you could almost say it's almost reaching up to come in contact with you in a way, and it has an innocence to it. But you have to sort of be willing to follow with inquiry your emotion spectrum, your emotional cascade, all the way down to kind of come in contact with it. And what we're doing is we're looking for the no. We're looking for, where am I resisting this? Where am I saying no to this experience? And this is the key. This is really important. Do I have to? Do I actually have to react to this? Do I have to say no to this? And you have to ask it with an open heart, because if you reference your mind, if you reference the past, you'll say, well, I always say no to it. Of course I have to. That won't work. You have to really go down, come in really close contact with it, and ask yourself, do I actually have to say no to this right now? Even if it's just one part of it, maybe you have to look for a precise location of this. Maybe your whole body feels like it's on fire or something, but in this moment, can I come to where's the most prominent aspect of it? Maybe it's in the gut, maybe it's in the chest, wherever it is. Can I go right to that core as close as I can, willing to feel everything I'm feeling in here, and ask the question, do I absolutely have to react to this? Do I have to say yes or no to this at all?
Yeah, I've been kind of doing that in a way. So I'm glad you expounded on that, because I had a dream where I had a box, a cardboard box full of vipers. Mm-hmm. And I knew the energy from that box was just unbelievable, and I didn't know what to do with it.
Yep.
And so since then, when I feel the energy, sometimes I say, okay, well, maybe this is Viper energy. Can I accept this?
Yeah.
So I am kind of trying that approach.
Yep. Now here's the thing, but what I don't recommend though is pasting an unwilling acceptance over the top of it. That's not going to work. That's too up in the mind still. You got to really keep going down and just getting as close as you possibly can and just asking, is it absolutely necessary to have a reaction to this?
Okay.
Do I have to hold a position in regard to this? Whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I don't know what I am, but is it possible that I don't have to react in this moment? And you may not see anything right then. You may not get an answer, but you may notice a difference over time. The other thing is, once you've done this part, once you've really, you're sure you've come in contact with it, sometimes you get to this very strange place where it's like this sense of neutrality. It's a sense of surrender. It almost feels like a little bit of death when it's almost like being an infant laying there, feeling all the things an infant feels, but before it has any sense of self, it has no sense that it can get away from them. So it's just responding to its environment, and that's it. There's not a reaction, there's a response, and it's natural and seamless. You get almost to that place with it. It's very, very instinctual. Once you've gotten there, once you've touched it and you trust that you've actually gotten there, and just ask that fundamental question, then you can come a little bit more superficial and do a little work around inquiries. You can ask questions like, what is my fear about this? What is my fear about pain or emotional pain? And then look for the practical concerns. You may have concerns like, well, I have a fear that if this stays around, I won't be able to do the things I want to do in my life later, or I'm afraid this will become debilitating for me, or whatever they are. But the associated fears and beliefs around this, investigating those once you've gone deep can be really helpful. But trying to do that too superficially is not necessarily going to be that helpful. So the primary thing, in my opinion, is to go deep, deep, deep and be willing to touch this and come to this place where you're, just beyond where you're begrudgingly accepting it, to where there's just this cauldron of intense sensation with no identity. And you're just right there and saying, do I have to react? Could I stay here just for a moment? Could it be okay? Could it be okay? Yeah, like that. Try that.
Great, thanks. I'm just astounded and amazed at your depth of understanding of the human psyche and your willingness to help us. Bless you. It's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Nice meeting you. Okay. Okay, that was Patty. Frankie. Okay, we'll go past Frankie for a moment. We'll go to the real Alex Linden.
Try again in a few seconds.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey.
Oh, wait, was that Frankie? Did we miss Frankie?
No, that was my Google.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
My Google voice.
You're the real deal.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think you pretty much answered my question, like several questions, and I'm just really grateful for everyone's question, honestly. But last week, I caught a glimpse of a really deep place, and I had a really major cathartic release that was really beautiful, allowed it. Towards the end, so there was grief in the body, and then there was grief in the way I've lived my life and all the structure of beliefs that were there. And it's like, it's too much. That's what the thoughts kept saying. This is too much. It's too much pain, too much joy. All the ways I've protected myself and hurt others over this lifetime. It's just too much to bear and to look at all at once. And so I did one of the coping mechanisms that you mentioned, and I numbed out. I like scrolled and just got busy and irritated again. But I wonder if you could talk about this, like this immense grief and this other bottom falling out of beliefs, and like it seems like everything I've believed is not true. Everything is not true.
Yeah. Yeah. Can be a strange revelation. Yeah. I mean, you can sort of use an inquiry and ask yourself, what if I just give myself permission to only live from here, from this moment, and that's it. Knowing that's the only thing I can do. It's the only thing I've ever done, and it's really the only thing anyone ever does. If the past grabbed you in a thought, it will be a thought. Also, don't push that away saying, no, I'm going to stay present. Just acknowledge it. There's a thought of the past here. And there's a monitoring thought that says, this is too intense, too much, can't handle it. That's also here. Perfectly okay, because it's here. And if it's here, it's okay. If it's here, it's already being accepted. It's already being assimilated. It's already being felt. So sometimes we overemphasize presence in that we're afraid of a thought about the past, or we resist thoughts or interpretations. But it's at first we have to acknowledge that they are thoughts, that the past is a thought. We have to acknowledge that judgments are thoughts. That if I think that guy's a jerk, it's not that he's actually a jerk. It's just that there's a thought that says he's a jerk, right? So there is a layer of realization that's important to recognize all of that. But then we have to take it even deeper and realize, and all of those thoughts only happen now. They're only made out of now. They're only made out of presence. It's a form of presence. It's consciousness presence. And really giving yourself permission to fully inhabit any thought, whatever it is, but remembering that that's only happening right now. And it's complete innocence. It's complete innocence. A thought about the past that says I should have done it differently is not really seeing clearly. It's not seeing what it thinks is the past clearly. It's really just the lens itself is a little bit distorted. The fact that we're looking through a thought lens and believing it just a little too much, that in and of itself causes a little bit of distortion, and it feels uncomfortable. It feels like something's wrong. But the literal way the mind will interpret that is something is wrong because I did something wrong and I did it at a time that I can never access again. And so now there's something fundamentally wrong with me. That's where regret turns into shame. But all of that is it's just a little bit of the lens distortion. It's just a little bit of a couple degrees off of the way the lens of thought functions. And when we remind ourselves, the discomfort is never because of something that actually did happen. The discomfort is when we're not fully inhabiting what is happening now, including the thought itself, fully experiencing this as a movement of consciousness and this moment as it is, and myself as I am in this moment, fully innocent, just experiencing what's coming. By the time you're aware of it, it's already happened, right? It's by the time we can even reflect on a thought, it's already there. By the time we can reflect on the movement of the body, it's already here. And so just being willing to kind of fully forgive yourself, because if there's ever a sense of, oh, I've done this wrong or that wrong, especially when it's overwhelming or your instinct is that it's distorted, then it's not you and it's not the quote unquote the past. It's the distortion of the lens itself of thought that's making things uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Like another filter that it's passing through.
And the filter itself is what makes things uncomfortable. I'm trying to think of another example of this. This type of thing comes up a good amount. Like, okay, so often someone will have a thought that says, well, until I get this right about my life, I can never wake up. I won't wake up. I know, I know that. I know I'm not going to wake up until I get whatever, my debt paid off, or I stop using pot or things like that, right? The mind will say that, and it's uncomfortable to have that thought. But what I point to people is that the mind's interpretation is it's uncomfortable because I have to actually control something externally to make myself comfortable. That's not why it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because you're believing the thought. And that's a huge revelation when you realize you can completely let go of all of that seeming or suggested need for control. When you just see that what makes it uncomfortable is the belief that you have to be in control of something that's not here. You can never be in control of something that's not here because it doesn't exist. That's what's uncomfortable. Believing in something that doesn't exist is uncomfortable inherently, like control, the past, things like that. Does that make sense?
It does. And what about this like this crumbling of identity, or it's almost like schizophrenia, like where it's
Mhm.
like such depth and clarity right back to like so much control and
Mhm.
fear. That's uncomfortable
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah, the grasping is uncomfortable is really what it is. And the grasping is for the previous, what we consider to be the previous moment where there was clarity. But it's, again, it's the lens distortion that says the clarity is not here right now. It actually is. But the belief that it's not and the grasping go hand in hand. They're two sides of the same coin. The answer to this is just seeing it again and again and again. And just realizing, like, putting yourself to the truth test. Am I sure the clarity is not here right now? Am I absolutely sure that that clarity is not here right now? And some part of you knows it is. Of course it is, right? And then it's like, oh, okay, huh. Well, what is uncomfortable then? It's the sensation. But what about the sensation is uncomfortable? Well, something says it shouldn't be there. Something it's like in the background. Oh, I actually believe this sensation shouldn't be here. And the fact that it is here means that there's not clarity. And yet, when I look, I can still taste the clarity. It's obviously here. It's just that there's something else here in addition. And it's that kind of a thing. Like, just keep putting yourself to that truth test because you have the instinct. You clearly can easily touch into presence. And so also be patient. The fluctuation, flip-flopping stuff that happens, it's just kind of happens. I've never seen a magic bullet to just stop it immediately, but it can stop at any time, but you're not going to control that. It's just how it goes for a while.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. Nice meeting you. Okay. Ronald.
Yeah, I feel like I just won the lotto.
So do I.
Okay.
That's a cool tapestry behind you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I got this kind of Indian history, where I was into all Indian stuff and all that, But at any rate, to get to business here, it's like I wasn't familiar with the term Kensho until you were talking to the guy laying in bed talking about it. And I've heard my experience explained different ways, but never through that lens of Kensho. Okay, but that's it. That's that's where I've been at for I don't know, 3 years. But the thing I don't understand is when, like, you were doing the meditation, the guided meditation about following sound and following, our sense of sight, and like that. I don't resonate with that at all. Everything for me is pretty much just a big open space without boundaries or edges or anything. It's just a big open space. It's not emptiness. You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I don't understand why I don't get the guided meditation when you're talking about that stuff. I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about this big open space or this spaciousness, the openness, is sound part of that? Like the sound of this voice right now is just part of that?
Yeah, everything kind of happens within it. It's fundamental to everything.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. Do you experience, like, when you look at something across the room, does it seem very obvious that you're here as a body or a consciousness and that thing is over there? The distance relationship, does that seem obvious to you? So that's non-duality. Yeah, so that's non-dual realization, or at least that's no subject object experience. Also, when you experience a quote unquote object, when I say objects now and I'm talking to you, I mean in the conventional sense. So when you look at the clock on the wall, or you look at a picture on the wall, does that seem to have substance to you? Does it seem to actually exist somehow?
No, it seems that the fundamental thing that's always there is just the openness.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I can see an object, but openness is kind of like more fundamental.
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. hmm And does it feel intimate? So for instance, if you see, like we're talking about an object across the room, can you, if I were to say, does that object feel different than your body, than what we're calling your body? Does it feel different to you? Is there, no.
Everything feels the same.
Yeah, it's non-duality. That's what I would call realization of non-dual. And it's no big deal. It's natural, but it's also pretty remarkable, but you also get used to it.
Yeah, I feel very, very grateful
Mhm.
because I've seen a lot of people go through a lot to get this. I was just watching, just real quick, earlier, I was watching this thing about Tibet, where these monks are like living this austere, hard life to reach. And here I am sitting in my living room, you know, and it's like, wow, thank you, universe. Oh my God, you know. It's like,
Yeah. I can tell, like for anyone who's listening to this, I can just point a few things out that may or may not matter, but just talking to you, I can tell you a couple things that stick out. One is you're a humble guy. You're unguarded. These aspects we can do, any of us can develop that or find that part of ourselves, to be unguarded, to be humble, to be open, to be grateful, to be just grateful. But again, all those sort of come with the experience. This openness you're talking about also has a sort of bubbling gratitude to it. It has a sort of bubbling love to it, actually. Yeah, I don't have anything to add. It's wonderful. I'm happy to have talked to you.
thank you so much, Angelo.
Yeah. Really cool. Talk soon. Okay. Yeah.
Frankie.
Frankie. Okay. All right, Frankie, let's hear from you.
That was so weird. Right when you called me, I was driving and I hit a dead spot.
Oh,
And
no worries.
and then Rula was calling me saying, he called you.
I'm glad we got back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, you know, like I'd written to you, it's like not that long ago, I was following one of your videos and I was just having one of those days, and yeah, and you know, that shift happened, and I was listening to your interview with the most recent one with Z-Dog, and you were saying that it's you know, the most obvious thing that we overlook, and because it's so obvious and so simple, it's almost like, no, it can't be that. It's, you know, after all this time and all this stuff and all this pain and all this like life, it's that simple, and it's always been that simple. And I think I'm still kind of circling around that a little bit sometimes, even though actually, I'll be completely honest, this week I got sort of affirmation after affirmation after affirmation from everything that was happening around me, you know, good, bad, and different, wonderful, subtle, mundane. And yeah, and it seems to be settling down. But the thing I really wanted to ask you was, at least in my case, one of the things that has accompanied, if I'm honest, I guess, if I'm looking at it, the biggest shifts has been the death of people close to me, and not just, you know, fear of dying or fear of losing, you know, people I love or that, but sort of like the very intimate connection to the process of dying, either because I was there and a part of it, or because those that were there and were part of the actual process, felt comfortable in disclosing or confiding in me what that experience was like for them. And, at this stage, because it's happened so much, like I don't flinch anymore
Mhm.
when that happens, So of course it seems to happen more and more often,
Mm.
you know. And I don't know if you've encountered that, or if you've experienced that, or if you have any insight into that.
Well, I love it. How you said at the beginning of this conversation or of your statement that it is so simple and it's overlooked all the time. But the fact that it's overlooked means it's there. Like it's crazy, but it's really really there. And
Yeah.
again, it's sometimes it's the subtlest thing. It's a lens shift or something. And a lot of times we shift the lens and we catch a glimpse, and then we shift it back here and shift it back here and keep distracting ourselves. But it's like we keep sweeping past it, and it's just there waiting for us. It's like, okay, here I am. And it really is that way. As I was speaking with the gentleman just before you, that openness, that unguarded nature to all experience, regardless of painful, not painful, sad, happy, loss, gain. It really is like this profound trust in life, including death, right? Death to me is a very fascinating thing. It's really here all the time. The life cannot be separated from death in the physical way we talk about death, or even in the sense that death is a profound transformation, and it's always happening. It's always here. And so in a sense, it's one of my favorite subjects, right? But that could sound morbid depending on who I'm talking to, but it's a fascinating subject. It's wonderful. Like, you can't have life without death. And at all these levels, it's occurring all the time. And it's amazing to me. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing process. I feel like I'm looking into the abyss, like, all the time, and these lifetimes are so short.
Yeah.
One Zen teacher said, if you see reality as it truly is, your life will pass like a flash of lightning.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's pretty crazy. And I can like, I mean, it's what you were saying before, now I'm looking back and I can't believe how badly I misapprehended the experiences while they were happening. And now they're the biggest gift, because
Mhm.
it keeps coming up, people are gonna die, I'm gonna die. And it always, I don't know, it's like the one thing where everybody seems to freak and doesn't know what to say, doesn't know what to do, doesn't know how to be with it or around it, or with the idea of it, or with their non-idea of it. And I keep getting it over and over and over again. It's like
Mhm.
that's like that's the gift that I got
Yeah,
in all of this, you know.
wonderful.
Mm, But yeah, and just this year, I mean, I think that's been maybe almost the near to last litmus test for, is this for real, or am I just kind of talking myself into something, and I'm not having nearly any kind of reaction that I had in the past, even though I'm having all the same emotions, from, the anger and the frustration and the sadness and the grief, and like all those are still there and still very much as potent as they were before. But all that desperation and all that hopelessness and all that, like, oh, how do you keep living when everybody's dying, kind of thing. It's like, nah,
Yeah.
that's not there, you
That's the
know?
beauty. That's the most beautiful gift one of the most beautiful gifts of this whole deal is when we realize reactivity or reacting it's not necessary. You can feel the whole
Yeah.
spectrum of emotions, but we actually don't have to react. It seems like we do, but only through the lens of reaction that we've identified with. But after we can set the lens down, it's amazing what we don't have to react to,
Yeah.
and how much closer you are to experience when you don't. Strangely.
That's exactly it. It's like I've actually felt closer to everyone that's been involved in these different occurrences. because it's been a lot, especially on
Yeah.
top of COVID and everything else. I mean, it's not like death is ever easy, but especially at a
Sure.
time when everybody's so afraid, or so worried. So yeah, it's been yeah, but that was it. That was my that's my big question.
Check out the documentary Grief Walker. You'll love it.
Oh,
You seen it?
I haven't just seen it. I'm friends with the guy who's an apprentice to Steve
Oh, okay,
Jenkinson,
cool. Oh yeah, yeah. That's such a great. It's a great one.
and I just talked to him yesterday. So he's actually going out there for a barn raising.
Nice. I mean, it's
So,
a trip,
cool.
but it's a wonderful documentary. Yeah,
No, the book is great too. The book is great.
very cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Right
Angela.
on, man.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
nice talking to you. All right, Rula's next.
Sorry, couldn't figure out how to unmute myself for a second. Hi, Angelo.
Hi.
Thank you so much for this retreat. It's been a roller coaster of it almost feels like there's no way of avoiding the shadow work anymore. I think I probably was trying to avoid it for a while. This may be a meaningless question. Part of me feels like it's meaningless, but I'm just going to ask anyway. Is it possible that, obviously we have repressed feelings and emotions and things. Is it possible that that last veil or whatever drops off? Let's say some emotion or for me, it almost feels like just during this retreat, I got this really, really intense sense that there's some kind of memory that has been repressed that I've never had a traumatic experience in my life, like, really traumatic, you know what I mean? And I just got this really, really intense sense that something wanted to come through, like a memory that I've just totally repressed, that I have no idea about. And I felt really scared that it was just going to come up in front of me and I was going to see it. And suddenly I thought, well, maybe that's what wants to happen or needs to happen, and I'm not allowing it to. So I was trying to ask kind of just the universe or whatever to just let me have the courage if that needs to be seen. I'm just wondering if that kind of thing, just like one thing could, I mean, I know it's hard to say what can make the veil drop totally, but could it be something like that? And if I, because I do inquiry all the time, I do all of that stuff on a regular basis, and there's a lot there. But sometimes I feel like, or especially in this retreat, just with this particular thing, I guess I should just open up and just let whatever be.
I would, yeah, that's what I recommend. I can't tell you what the last veil is ever, because it you never know, but my instinct is, and knowing you, like you have the capacity for this. I mean, so open to whatever it is, let it come if it needs to. You might be surprised. I mean, I've seen this happen with different people, and sometimes it is literally a repressed memory from this lifetime. Other people almost open something from even another lifetime kind of thing. You just don't know what's there, but if something wants to come to the surface, let it come, and it usually does in its own time.
Thank you.
But yeah, just give it space, give it love.
I will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Stephen or Stefan?
Stephen, hey,
Okay.
Angela.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
First of all, same as many other people, I would just like to thank you. I've been on this non-dual path for quite a number of years, and due to a combination of financial hardship and geographical location, I've never been able to attend retreats. So I really, really appreciate it. It means a lot that you make this so accessible. So thanks.
Mhm.
Look, I wanted to, something came up. I didn't even think I would ask a question on this retreat because it's been so rich with other people's questions. The Q&As have been just amazing. But something came up for me earlier today when we did the exploration into the sense fields.
Mhm.
So, you know, we began with hearing, and this is relatively new to me. I kind of started playing with this just before we started the retreat, actually. But that went really well. I managed to kind of fall into this, homogeneous space where there was just sound, without sort of fixating on any particular sound. And then we focused on the physical sensations in the body. And I've done quite a lot of body work, so that went very well. And then kind of bringing them together also seemed to go really nice and smoothly. All great so far. and so it felt quite homogenous, bringing these two sensory experiences together. And you know, the mind is kind of, especially if there's a loud sound, you know, it momentarily kind of, you know, focuses its attention, but generally it went really well. And then something really interesting happened. And I don't even know how to describe it now, and I don't even know how well I can trust my own memory, but the way it seemed to me, it was like these two sensory experiences came together so completely that I couldn't tell the difference between them.
Mhm.
And I was, it was just a few moments, and I was completely lost in it.
Mhm.
And so two things struck me instantaneously, and one was extreme astonishment and extreme panic.
Mhm.
And both these kinds of things are quite alien to me. I'm not a very uppity, stressful, panic-ridden kind of person. So yeah, there was just this astonishment, this panic, and it manifested in the body, like particularly in my legs. It was like my body wanted to get up and run. I mean, everything was tensed up and was telling me, you know, I need to go. I was very aware of what was going on. I stayed with it.
Yeah.
But the actual experience itself kind of shook me out of it for a moment there. And another thing that I noticed just afterwards was, and I don't know if this is directly related or whether it just acted as a catalyst to bring up some emotion, repressed emotion that I haven't yet cleared out. But there was just a vague feeling of sadness in the center of my chest. So I would like, if you could, to comment if you've got anything to talk about around that. And just following that, we moved into the visual field.
Yeah.
And this I've actually done a lot of work with without really knowing that I was doing any work with it. It's just something I've been playing. I think I used to do this when I was a kid, where I would just kind of defocus from anything particular in the environment and just just go with the seeing. So that went really well, and I think the very act of opening my eyes actually kind of helped ground me a little bit, if you like. But at that moment, it brought up something that I've heard you say repeatedly, and just tell me if I'm quoting you, but it's something to the effect of, "There's no seer, there is only the seen." And if I'm going to be completely honest, my experience feels a little bit different than that. And this might just be semantics, Angela, that there's no seer, there's no thing seen,
Right.
there's just the seeing.
Yes.
and it's like the seeing. It's weird. It's like the seeing without noticing.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you get what I mean.
100%.
So it's those two things that I would really appreciate if
Yeah.
you could shed any light on.
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with the last one first, but it's interesting you say it that way. I made a video once where I was doing the same sort of pointing and I was using the terminology seeing, and someone made a comment, and it was kind of, he was like correcting me because he was quoting the Bahaya Sutta, which says, in the scene, there's only the scene. And he's like telling me, well, it's not seeing, it's seen, because seeing assumes there's a person. And when I had this realization, I realized there wasn't a process or a person seeing, it was just the scene. And my point, I made another follow-up video about this. And my point was, this is the problem with language, right? If you say seeing, it sounds like a process. With a process, you could assume a seer, but I don't assume a seer. There's just the seeing, right? If you say there's the seen, you assume an object out there somewhere. It's the nature of language, subject, object, right? But you're
It's like
right.
with
It's
hearing,
much more. It's much
like with
more like
hearing,
a
it's-
holistic experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Holistic meaning like the experience is experiencing itself. There's not an object out there being seen. There's not someone in here seeing it. It's like a radically alive seeing, and all of a sudden you're that, like you're in that, or there's no you separated, right? So to go back to the beginning of your question and your experience, it can be tremendously surprising, even when you've heard about what I talk about non-duality of, yeah, it's not in here. It's literally like you find yourself out there, or the physical world changes, right? There's no good way to talk about this, but I can kind of lead into it experientially, or just show you how to do it yourself. But it's always surprising, especially when you taste it for the first time. And your response is actually pretty common. So some people get started on this path, not as much through like trying to wake up or, working toward Kensho or something like that, but they actually have spontaneously an experience of that. That's very short-lived. But as you know, it's so profound that it changes the way they perceive everything. You can't never forget that happened. You can never forget when you disappear as a separate entity and become the environment. And it's like, whoa, like the universe is not like you thought it was, right? And so some people come to this stuff by having that experience. And often it's exactly like that. It's this massive amount of wonder and just like awe of like sublime, what the hell?
Yeah.
Followed by this contraction of like, whoa, wait a minute, what happens to me then? Like, right? Because I'm not there if everything's there. It's just everything experiencing itself. What happens to me, right? So it's a sort of contraction of self-defense, or trying to get a perspective back, because the mind is all about perspective, holding a perspective and a view. When you're suddenly the environment, there's no perspective or view anymore, right? And this gentleman I talked to a few people ago, that's why he was saying, I don't know what you're talking about on these, because he doesn't experience things separately like that. He lives in this environment and as this environment. And that's realization of non-duality versus a taste of it. Now, I will say that when it's natural, like once it's realized, it's not so dramatic and striking, because the contrast isn't there. The contrast from being what feels like inside here to all of a sudden out here and back, the contrast itself makes it very striking and dramatic. But when it sort of like, it'll fluctuate for a while, a lot of times or whatever, and then sometimes it's just, oh, it's just like this. Then it's not a big deal. You're not freaking out about it. It's just natural. It's like, oh, it's just like this. And it's weird. It's strange at first. And there's some adjustments maybe, but it's not like a terror response. It's just like, oh, okay. And then you really start to experience the depth, the expansiveness, the implications that there's really nothing separate. And you feel as everything. It's crazy, but you feel yourself as everything, in a sense. And that has with it this deep sense of gratitude is a word that's coming, but it's more like it's like an awe, like you're just in awe of it. And it's very humbling. And but it also comes with it this movement of love, of you just want to express love outwardly, because there's nothing to solve anymore. That everything is just here for you. And it's so wonderful to be alive. It's so wonderful just to be in physical experience at all, that there's abundance, and the abundance starts to flow outward, and it feels like love. And so yeah.
So do you think, well, this is what I think, that because I want to revisit. In fact, I tried to not revisit this experience, but you know, I went through that process again, and there were there, I didn't get that same experience, that powerful experience, and I didn't want to describe as you just did because I just didn't want to sound like a cliche, but it really was like I disappeared, and there was just this sensing,
Yeah.
and there was nothing else, and it flipped me out. And I mean, because like Maggie mentioned earlier, like, you know, she doesn't know what people's talking about. I've been on this path for years, and it seems like every man and his dog has got an awakening experience, a very exotic one often to talk about. And my own experience through this path has been very incremental. I mean, I'm a radically different person than I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, you know, and it's just been very incremental. And even the insights are kind of absorbed and live before, you know, you kind of see and after the fact that there was a big shift here, you know. So just for anyone else out there, any of you guys who feel like Maggie was saying that, you know, I don't know what people are talking about. It's not, and I'm sure you can confirm this, Angelo, it's not all this, you know, fireworks and whistles for all of us. A lot of it can be very incremental, but this today was something else.
It's a trip. It's a trip.
So would recommend though to continue exploring with the sense fields around this?
Just do it at whatever you've been doing already. Just do that and add to it a little bit of this work around the sense fields. I have a playlist called Non-Duality that literally is all that. Most of the videos there are this type of thing, different approaches to it. You can do it yourself literally all day long if you want to. I mean, it becomes so enjoyable. It's not a practice after a while. It's just you're participating in the fascination of aliveness. It's pretty wild. So it becomes just a matter of, wow, okay, yeah, the sense fields, the sound and sensation field are essentially wide open, undivided, but there's still something going on in the visual field sometimes, and you can explore that and it starts to kind of dissolve. So it's different for everyone, and it tends to be a little bit incremental. It tends to have these big breaks and then comes back into itself, and then the next time it's not so much of a fear response, and then it coalesces over time. But yeah, you can contemplate it exactly that way. Careful, gentle, simple. Don't try to take any past experience and like paste it over your experience now. Just keep looking. Okay, where is the dividing line? Where is it, if there is one? Can I just relax my attention just a little bit more here? You know, very simple things, just all the pointers I give.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm glad you came. We'll see you at further retreats, I'm sure.
Yeah, you betcha.
Awesome. Okay, Miranda.
Hey.
I
just want to reiterate too, just like, thank you so much. This has been such an incredibly generous offering. And I've been doing healing work of all kinds specifically for a very long time. And the combination of your wisdom and humility and generosity, I think is really rare. And so just lots of gratitude. I can relate, you know, you talked about, I had a deep sense of dis-ease from early childhood. I was molested by my pediatrician. I was raped as an adult. And it was really after that experience. I mean, I just went through years of addiction, abusive relationships, and just dysfunction. Before really waking up, like in 2019, after the death of my dog, actually, and the pain of my children, and realizing I was passing on the trauma that I had experienced and had been in generations of my family. And that started me on, you know, opening up to a different kind of healing. If anyone mentioned anything about spirituality or God to me or anything, it just I was just full of rage. So I'm the most least likely candidate for the and it just became when pandemic hit and I was able to shut down and rest, and someone offhandedly told me that I should be a Buddhist, and it just caught my ear at the right time. And so I just started looking into this shit, and I definitely don't want to be part of any religion that's more clear now than ever. But the Buddhists really opened me up so much to a different kind of mind work, really. Everything had been psychology based, that I've been in and out of treatment centers and just was not finding relief, and just so contracted around my pain and anger and resentment, and became so isolated, just no fucking relationships, like cut everyone off except for my children, and they were just like incubating in my pain with me. And through all of this, you know, the last few years, I've done so much healing work. Like Stephen said, I'm not even the same person that I was 10 years ago. And have really helped so many people in my life to heal and open up about their sexual abuse. I had an experience in February that was like pretty protracted and profound. I was listening to Martha back in my kitchen, and just, I don't know, like a half an hour later, I was like on my living room floor, like just saying thank you, thank you, thank you over and over again. And I just, for about 3 weeks, just experienced the most deep sense of connection, no pain, peace. I mean, feeling all the pain, actually feeling, but just so profoundly okay. Like when you're talking about that, just like this profound sense that nothing was for naught, like none of the suffering. This deep sense of connection with the people who would hurt me. Then ever since then, I really think part of like the falling away came from this. I was lying in bed getting ready to go to sleep one night, and like everything completely fell away. Like it was just this brief momentary, and I kind of had this like mental gasp, and before I knew it, I was like back in like just horrible depression and anxiety. And I felt in recent weeks like a deeper sense of equanimity than I've ever felt. But it's what really comes up for me that's so disturbing. And there is this catch there of, I mean, it's just profound shame. And because it's so often triggered by my body image, by a very like, it feels so shallow. So I judge myself really deeply for that. But it's like, you know, I know a lot of it's very common to survivors of sexual abuse and assault. And so it's like, it's a very of that brand. But like, it's this just sense of being like, how am I going to ever achieve like an abiding sense of peace in this body that it seems so disgusting and unbearable, and like, and I can't look at it, and it puts this feeling of deep separation between me and especially other people. And it keeps me also, then it just spirals into this very like, this place that I never felt like I could get back to for like these, few weeks where I don't ever doubt what happened to me. I don't ever doubt what's underneath. There are so many things I could never like unsee or unfeel. But it's like, I become suicidal. Like I have no intention. I have a commitment to my children, even though they're grown now, but it's a deep ideation and this feeling of just, I don't know if I can survive this lifetime feeling that like deep sense of separation. And my ability to like talk to people about these things, like, I experience this, and I have so many people like share their gratitude with me for being able to share these things. And like, now that I've had this experience, I feel like, because I have a project in the works that I want to do to help, people with mental health issues. But now I feel like not that I don't have anything to offer if I'm not realized, because it feels like falling short of what I want and want to be able to go with. So.
Yeah, what comes across, at least in that last part, is your profound commitment to compassion, to doing it the right way, which is awesome. It really is. You can see
deciding, like, I made this commitment to myself that I was just going to do a few years ago the most loving thing that I possibly could in every moment, and that is what is pulled me out of hell.
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's so inspiring. Really. To come from, I mean, that's the symbol of the lotus flower comes to mind. To come out of what you've been through, that the amount of pain and the pain that just is so consuming, it becomes your identity. But to find a way out, to find a crack, to find one shred of light. And this process that someone asked a couple of days about grace, and as you were talking, that's what I felt the whole time, is this is how grace works. It's that little ray of light, but you have to orient to it. You have to be willing to do the work that you've done. You have to continue to open to it, and you did, and it's such an amazing story. And your compassion is strong. I can feel it. You're going to help a lot of people, and you already are. I know.
I just feel right now this profound sense of like shame in hearing like a frog.
I understand.
Can't see like
We'll
how.
I understand. Totally understand. The shame thing is it's really, it fascinates me because everybody has this shame core. But people who've been abused, and especially sexual abuse, if there's something about the way it gets transmitted, and it's almost like a direct transmission of a little core of shame from one person to another person in a very secretive way. And the secretiveness is built into the way this happens. And the secretiveness also it sort of charges the shame, and it says, do not look here. Shame is just something that says, whatever you do, don't look here. You don't want to see what's in the center of this. You don't want to see what's in the center of me. It's so accursed. It's so bad. You'd rather kill yourself than look here. Like that's the voice of the sort of outer coating of shame, or the outer shell of shame. You now are at a place, I think, where your heart is so big, and you have so much compassion online that you can hold this. And what I mean by that is you can literally come into a relationship with this shame, knowing that it's partially yours, but largely it's not even yours. You're holding shame body that's ancient, that's been finding places in the human psyche to hide. And it transmits all over the place. It goes through families, it goes through non-family interactions, and it finds a place to hide. You are now at a place, I'm just talking intuitively, where you can come into contact and communion with it in a way that is not only going to heal you further, but it's going to give you an opportunity to interact with other people who are suffering in a way that many people can't actually do, that many teachers can't actually do. I see it, even enlightened teachers. Now, whether that's good or bad, it's just how it is. That's what I sense with you.
Talking about, I think that there are specific wounds that have to, there has to be this understanding that somebody has experienced that specifically. Or for me, it was, I had to hear people who had really fucked up their life. You know, I had to hear from people who had really turned against themselves and turned away from the world and away from love to believe, like Byron Katie, for example, like that I could actually heal too. And but I think that I'm trying to turn toward the shame. Like I get in, I keep doing the same thing over and over again. And it's like this feeling of like, I can really just like become very committed to like fucking off the shame. Like, and really just like understanding like this is keeping me in this cycle of like unworthiness and what's the word I'm looking for, like I don't know, where I just feel very like unresourced and incapable. And then I feel like I start abusing myself with teachings, and I can't tell if I'm abusing myself with teachings or if I'm trying to let myself off the hook.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. Here's the thing.
Like, that's the most intense thing that I'm dealing with over and over again.
I totally get it. I totally get it. Here's what I recommend for you. The approach to shame here has to come from one place, and that's unconditional love. If you perceive shame, whatever's the experience you're having, we're calling shame, if you perceive that as foreign, as something that needs to go away, as something that's not right, that's not okay at any level, you're doing what the last person did with shame and what the person before them did with it. They're trying to find another home for it. If you talk right to it and you recognize it as a life form, it's a little bit of life that's been pinched off and shoved into a box and transmitted through abuse from person to person. All it wants to do is be what it is. You have to be willing to open to what it actually is. Like I was saying, the outside of it says, don't look here, don't look here. You're rotten. Your body's all the horrible thing. You're going to kill yourself. You can't handle this. That's what the outside surface says. You could almost say that that's its own coping mechanism, its own protection. But what needs protected more than anything? The most precious thing in the universe. What's in there isn't what we think it is. It's a life form. It needs love. Your approach can be to actually come into relationship with it and offer massive amounts of love. That's the only thing. You can talk directly to it. You have my permission to be here. If you need to be here, I'm opening the door for you. Everyone else shut the door to you. I won't shut the door to you. My door's open. You can stay here as long as you need to. You can be here. It's got to be love. Just like your child. If your child looked extremely shameful coming home from school one day and you couldn't get your child to tell you what was wrong, you have no idea what was wrong, but you know something's wrong, you're not going to get upset with it and leave, come back when you can tell me what's wrong. No, you're going to hold it as close as you can. Just offer massive amounts of love, acceptance. Literally, directly come into contact with shame this way, that this thing you inherited, this being you inherited, it's a life form. And this is my own experience, and it's the only way it would have worked for me. It does work. It did work for me. And it's just offering massive amount of love that you can be here. And you're not trying to transform it, but you want to see it for what it really is. And that every life form has the right to live, to be what it is, to have acceptance, to have love, to be noticed, to be seen. that and offer that kind of absolute love to it instead of trying to fix it, trying to get rid of it, trying to inquire it away. Does that help? Does that make sense? That would
Yeah.
be my approach.
It's just the hardest thing.
It's hard.
Just excuses come up. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah. And with the body stuff, it's just like all of the physical evidence of reasons to not accept. And
Totally.
it's so fucked up. Like I like it's exactly the opposite of everything that I tell everyone, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
But yeah, I guess that's, you know, trying to, I don't really, I miss the feeling of what I experienced.
Yeah.
But I don't try and recreate it. I
Right.
don't dwell on it not being there, but I worry that everything that I have to offer everyone else is going to fall short, not coming from that place.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Totally. That's the voice of unconditional love. Now, what else I'll offer to you is it's not all or nothing either. Shame, this shame that we're talking about, it may be a very, very, very triggering, challenging place or whatever. There may be other emotions you're much more comfortable with. Maybe you're more comfortable with fear. So you can start with a different, yes.
5 minutes, just so you
Okay,
know.
cool. So you can start with a different emotion that you're perhaps more comfortable with being in your system, like maybe self-doubt or fear or anything, jealousy. I don't know what it is. Start with a different emotion and just show yourself that you actually have the capacity to give it the space of your attention, give it your body, just talk directly to it. You fear, you have resistance. I know you tend to hide. You don't always show yourself, but I know you also just want to be what you are. You have my permission to be here. Be here as long as you need to. You have my attention. You have my full attention right now. You know, you can also sort of show yourself you have the capacity for this kind of full acceptance, and just always coming back to the instinct. If you resonate with it, if you resonate with this, if you don't, that's a different thing. But if you resonate with the instinct that I have, that is, these are life forms. If they're energetically experienced in your body right now, regardless of how they came about in the past or how they came to you, they're life forms, and they deserve some kind of love, right? I mean, that's what they've been doing, is trying to find some body,
Yeah.
some person that actually can even just acknowledge that they deserve to
Yeah.
breathe. Yeah. You have the capacity for this. I can just tell you do. I can see it.
Angelo,
Yes.
can I just offer her 2 pieces of just like trauma survivor to trauma survivor?
Sure.
One, Miranda, when you look at your shame, ask yourself whose shame it is. Because I know as a trauma survivor, you probably had lots of people telling you all the things that you did were wrong, fucked up, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it was your kids, maybe it was your parents, maybe it was whoever hurt you. So not all your shame is always yours. But like Angelo said, the other thing that's helped me is that realizing that shame isn't always bad. Sometimes shame is helpful to help you feel like you learned something, you know. It's not necessarily your enemy, right? Like just from me to you, because I've experienced sort of a lot of the same type stuff. And so you don't have to like resist it, but like just really like talk to it in your shadow work, where it is all coming from, you know?
Thank you.
And
Stacey.
my heart's with you.
Thank you.
You Miranda, you have, yeah. I mean, I know there's many people on here I've never met before this retreat, but I know many people here who also have been through various versions of that as well, of abuse, sexual abuse, trauma, big time trauma, and have gone through all of this that you're going through. And we're all with you. We're all with you. So stay in touch and let me know how things are going.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Like gratitude.
Thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I aspire to, people ask me sometimes, I think I mentioned this in a talk recently, of like, when is this process over? And there is a finite point for this process in one sense, but in another sense, it's just the beginning, because what I look at when I look out into the world is I see people who have never had a chance. They've had nothing but trauma. they're going to look at spirituality and think it's the biggest load of crap in the world, you know. And I actually felt like that myself. Again, it had to be transmitted to me somehow. I had to bump into the right person to go, oh shit, they're talking about not what this other stuff people are talking about. They're talking about something that's directly accessible to me right now. They're talking about a way out of suffering, and it feels real and alive. And so how can I transmit that to, you know, the people who would be the last ones to look at this kind of thing on YouTube or something, and, you know, whatever. So that's what I aspire to, you know, and I can tell that's what you are orienting toward yourself, of how can you reach the ones who suffer absolutely the most, that, you know, they think they're beyond help. Most people think they're beyond help.
And feel like all the answers are in the matrix. Like it's going to be
Right.
found in the matrix when there's no fucking way.
Right.
Like there's no fucking way.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'll write you and tell you about the project that I'm working on.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. It was really nice talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Okay. We are done with question answer. We're going to do poetry at 7:40, I believe, whenever we usually do it. Bring your poetry, your song lyrics, and we'll have some fun. See you soon.